Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 21st of October. Today we have some updates, so let's start. First let's discuss about the events that took place on the front lines. If we are talking about Kupiansk-Liman front line, the front line is stable. The only update we can say that Ukrainians were still are trying to establish some stable bridgehead on this side, on the east side of Zhiribets river, of this river. They were trying to cross this river one more time and their attempt failed. They lost around 25 soldiers and something around 4 armored vehicles. They were trying to cross this Zhiribets river all along this river from Raigorodka till the let's say Zarechna. And this evening, right before I start creating this video, the Russian source reported that Ukrainians started their counter-offensive operation and they were trying to, from the direction of Terny towards the road that connects Kremenная and Svatova, this road. The Ukrainians were trying to make the fast attack, fast jump from this area to this road, trying to cut this road. And the Russians reported that the Ukrainian used around a few battalions, I believe so, and as a result of that attack they lost a few tanks and some infantry in this area. If we are talking about the front line between Severs to Bakhmut, the front line is stable, and the only update from Bakhmut is that the Russians reported that they managed to take the final checkpoint before Opytne. And if we take a look at this map, we're going to see that there are two checkpoints before Opytne according to this map. One of them is these ones, the trenches right in front of Russian position in Zaitsevo, and the second one is this checkpoint. But if we take a look at this map, we see that one of these checkpoints is located in the gray zone. So I believe that the Russians got control of this checkpoint a few days ago, I believe so. So I believe that the Russians were talking about this checkpoint. So that means that now we can say that the Russians are able to storm Opytne in the south of Bakhmut from three sides, from Ivangrad and from, let's say, Zaitsevo, Atradovka area from this checkpoint. The main Ukrainian forces are located in Klishchevka and in the suburbs of this area. Of course, there are some forces in Opytne. And if the Russians are able to take Opytne, of course, we can say that the Russians will be able to start offensive storm operation of Bakhmut. The Ukrainian sources, the Ukrainian military experts, and the Russian military experts are saying that if the Russians are able to take Bakhmut, and we understand that they are able, I'm not sure about the timings, in a month or in 2 or maybe in a year, who knows, but anyway, it will bring a lot of problem for the Ukrainians, because as soon as the Russians take this town, they will achieve some operational square to attack. They will be able to finally to solve the issue with Seversk and to start fence storming and, let's say, Konstantinovka Chasov Yar storming operation. From the other side, of course, we understand that Wagners are attacking this town, but from the other side, I believe that you saw how the internet calls the Wagner defense line. And this is very interesting, because if you are attacking, if you are storming Bakhmut, if you're storming this area, the question is, why are you preparing the defense line? And if we're talking about the Wagner's defense line, let's take a look at the Western sources map. The Russians are preparing defense line something like this. And then along Seversky Donetsk River. So this line and this line. And this is a very interesting question, because to tell the truth, I don't understand why the Russians are building such kind of defense line. The first one right in front of Seversk. This line we can understand because the Ukrainians made few attempts of counter-offensive operation in this area, and as a result of those attacks they took control over Belogorovka and over Sporne, this gray cloud. Furthermore, as we discussed today, the Ukrainians were attacking in direction of the road that connects Kremenная and Svatova. So we understand the reason of building this defense line, but the question is why the Russians are building this defense line that moves along Seversky Donetsk River. And I don't understand this because maybe they just want to be on the safe side and they have enough of resources to build, because who knows what the Ukrainians are able to do. Maybe the Russians just want to be on the safe side and they don't want to, if the Ukrainians started offensive operation and if they're able to crack the first defense line, so maybe just the Wagner force want to be sure that they will be able to stop the Ukrainians on the line of Lysychansk, because Lysychansk was taken by Akhmat, by Wagner, so I believe that it's like a question of their reputation and they don't want to lose this town no matter the resources they will spend on this. Now let's move to the south, let's move to Donetsk. As you can see, there are no changes as well. Donetsk is under very heavy fire. The Russians are storming the checkpoints and fortification around Donetsk, like Pervomaisk, like Vodiane, like Oputna. These vital checkpoints for the Russians. They need to do this. I'm not sure about the time, how much it will take, but anyway, no matter the results of this special operation, no matter if the Ukrainians or the Russians decide to freeze the conflicts, we understand that sooner or later they will start this war again. Anyway, the Russians need to push the Ukrainians from this line because it's highly unlikely to survive in Donetsk, being always under some fire from the Ukrainian side. If we're talking about the Zaporozhye front line, as you can see, according to the front line, there is one weak point from the Russian side. This small back I'm talking about, this one. The Russians are calling this Vremevka front line, Vremevka tactical direction, by the name of small town Vremevka that located right in front of Velika Novoselovka. Velika Novoselovka is a very powerful fortification where the Ukrainians are keeping a lot of forces. If we take a look at the map of this position, we're going to see that the Ukrainians have a tank brigade, some kind of motorized brigade, the defense brigade, mechanized brigade, and so on. This back I'm talking about. And the Ukrainians during the previous hours, were trying to push the Russians back from this area, because, as you know, a few days ago we reported that the Russians got control over Vremevka. I'm not sure why the Russians are not updating this map, but I believe that soon they will do this. Anyway, this sound or under Russian control or in the gray zone. So the Ukrainians were trying to attack the Russians in this area, but they were defeated. And the Russians didn't provide about the numbers of losses, but anyway, I'm not sure that it's like thousands. I believe that maybe a few campaigns were attacking this area, and they were just covered by the Russian artillery and were forced to step back. So, as you can see, no changes on this area as well. If we are talking about, the Ukrainians lost. The Ukraine lost around 40 soldiers and something around 10 armored vehicles. And now we're moving to Kherson district. As you know, as you can see, the dam still exists. Nobody destroyed the dam. But yesterday there was a very unpleasant accident. The Russians are trying to evacuate civilians from Kherson 24 hours a day. It's like unstoppable process, ongoing process all the time. They're trying to move their civilians from Kherson to this side of the river. And yesterday at night, the Ukrainians, at least the Russian sources are saying that using the HIMARS system, the Ukrainians attacked this area. As you can see, there are two icons in this area, while civilians were trying to evacuate from this side of the river. And as a result of that attack, 2 people were killed and something around 14 were wounded. So it's not very good, of course, we understand, to attack civilians. But if we're talking about the front lines, the Ukrainians made another attempt to attack the Russians on this area. They lost around 120 soldiers, something around 19 armored vehicles. The Ukrainians were attacking in the direction of David Brody. They still don't have a stable connection between these two bridgeheads. The first one is in the area of Andreevka, Belogorovka. According to this map, we see that there is something like a small area that the Ukrainians are able to use to connect with David Brod and further from David Brod to this bridgehead. But as I understand, this way is not safe, and the Russians have established fire control, something like this. So that's why the Ukrainians are trying to develop this bridgehead and to have stable communication between these two front lines before upcoming possible offensive operation. Another area where the Ukrainians were attacking is, as usually, between the Petykhatki and Luchana in this front line. Between these two towns, using fields, right, between two armies that the Russians have their positions, Petykhatki, Borozinska, Kuchenska, Kasharova, and another group is located on Sukhanova, Chervony Yar. So these two places where the Russians have their positions, and the Ukrainians are trying to attack between these two towns, between those two areas, trying to get as close as possible, and after that to split in two sides. The first one to the north in direction of Davod and the second one in direction of the Dnieper River. But all the time, all these attempts failed. The Russians stopped. The Russian attacked with artillery and forced the Ukrainians to step back on their previous positions. So this is the situation about the front lines. Another important update about Ukraine, as you can see, by the end of this week, the Russians stopped attacking the energy facilities all over the Ukraine. And today, during this week, we got the number from the Ukrainian authorities that the Russians destroyed around 30% of energy system of Ukraine. But the Russian specialists are saying that the Russians managed to destroy up to 50% of energy facilities, energy system of Ukraine. Of course, two different numbers. It's up to you who to believe, but anyway, if we're talking about the Ukraine, about civilians, they do have problems with energy, with electricity and so on. They're trying to save as much as possible. So we'll see what the Russians are planning to do the next Monday, because usually, according to the previous data we have, the massive attack, usually the Russians start massive attack on Monday against the energy facilities. So we'll see. We'll see what the Russians are planning to do. Now let's take a look at the map of this position, but just with one purpose, to understand the real situation. As you can see, according to this map, just like trying to take a look at this map, we see that Ukrainians have at least two places where they have main forces. The first one is near Kherson. As you can see, there are a very big number of forces in this area, like motorized, mechanized, and we can see that if we compare the situation, this map with the real situation, we see that this map correlate with the real things that happens on the front line. The Ukrainians are attacking on this area from David Brodin, from Petykhatka in this area, using their tanks, and so we can say that the talks about the situation that Ukrainians are planning to start any counter-offensive operation near Kherson might be true, because they have at least power and forces to do this. If we're talking about Zaporozhye front line, as you can see, the front line is very big, but there are not much forces from in this area in comparison with, let's say, Kherson district. Yes, we can see a lot of icons, but if you take a look, there are mainly like artillery icons, territory defense icons. There are a lot of forces near the, as Russian source, Vremevka tactical bridgehead near this area, but these forces are here. I believe that they are here since the let's say June or even May of this year. So there are just no changes, and the Ukrainians are just trying to hold the Russians. It's some kind of artillery duels and nothing more. And there are a lot of forces. On Bakhmut, Seversk bridgehead, and of course a lot of forces on Liman, Kupiansk front line on this area. So I believe that Ukrainians still planning to attack. And as you can see, there is a fire icon showing the real places where there were heavy clashes. As you can see, three icons on Zhiribets River, where the Ukrainians were trying to cross this river during the previous 2 weeks, and all their attempts were failed. They were defeated and they had a lot of losses. There are a lot of icons near a town by the name of Ternid. It's the only bridgehead that Ukrainians have on this side of the river. And as you can see, they're trying to focus their attack, focus their destination, direction of Plashanka, Krasnoyarsk, and so on. So I believe that this area is a possible area where the Ukrainians might start offensive operation. Very interesting icons are from Dvorichna front line, from this area. As you know, the Russians reported about this area almost every day, starting from last 2 weeks ago. This is the area where the Ukrainians are using their 14th Mechanized Brigade, their 92nd Mechanized Brigade, and now the Ukrainians moved their 3rd Tank Brigade. So it's very powerful armored fist in this area. The only thing that Ukrainians have problem with, they can't create a stable bridgehead on the east side of Oskol River. So I believe that I believe that the problem is that they have a lot of mechanized brigades in this area, but they don't have enough of storm troops, storm brigades, or territory defense. So I believe if the Ukrainians wanted to develop their offensive operation in the north, they would bring some just infantry in this area and they would achieve a lot of success. But for now, they're just keeping mechanized brigade, and I have a question: why are they doing this? If we're talking about this front line, as you can see, there are a lot of brigades. I believe that there are more than 50, as we discussed in the previous videos. I believe that there are more than 70,000 soldiers in this area, and as you can see, the Ukrainians still have possibility to attack the Russians. And as you can see, there are a very big concentration of forces in Liman, now Ukrainian Liman. There is 66th Mechanized Brigade, 81st Air Assault Brigade, 103rd Defense Brigade, who stands right in front of the Russians on the Oskol River. So I believe that they're still accumulating forces, doing regrouping, and maybe they will start doing something. Because if we compare these two regions, I'm not saying that, I'm just trying to understand the positive and negative things for the Russians and for the Ukrainians. If we're talking about the south, the Ukrainians still have around 2 or 3 weeks, and after that the rain period are going to come, and then it will be highly unlikely that the Ukrainians will be able to use the fields to attack as they are doing right now. But if we're talking about the north, about this area, the weather doesn't play so much in this offensive operation comparison with the south, because there are a lot of forests in this area. This territory wasn't used as for agricultural and so on. So the Ukrainians have possibility, no matter the weather, no matter the rainy period, to use this area for offensive operations. So maybe the Ukrainians will start doing something like this. And of course, there is the third option. Maybe the Ukrainians are not planning to do anything till the end of this year. Now they just want to show like that they're doing something, but maybe they decided to hold these territories until the next summer, until the next spring, until they receive more Western weapon and air defense systems, some anti-drone system, and so on. And after that, in spring or summer, they will start attacking the Russians all along the front line. But we understand that by that time, the Russians will be able to deploy another 300,000 soldiers, and this is going to be a totally different war. If we're talking about Belarus, today we got more and more updates, video how the president of Belarus are doing inspection of the forces on this territory. And today I got very read very interesting article. This article gave an answer, at least a possible answer, why the Russians and the Belarus decided to prepare their common group on this area, common forces. The thing is that more and more sources, more and more people and experts are saying that the civilians from the army from Belarus, the people from Belarus, they don't want to be involved in this war. They don't want to take part in this war, because they just don't want to do this. And of course, when a lot of experts understand that if these soldiers receive an order to attack, they may fight not in full strength. So that's why the Russians and the Belarus military authorities decided to prepare a common group with one purpose, because if the Belarus soldiers refuse to attack or to fight in full strength or full power, the Russian forces will push them, not like anti-retreat forces, but like forces who will show an example, because we understand that, I believe that the Russians are going to deploy some forces with experienced commanders who will control and navigate the Russians and the Belarus forces in the north of Ukraine. If we're talking about the possibilities, as we discussed, the main goal, of course, to cut at least one supply road that connects Poland and the central or east part of Ukraine. At least to cut this road. This is the minimal plan that these forces need to achieve. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds you condemn any violence in Ukraine. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.